right, so we had an interesting session today, which was on the implications of the Paris COP21 agreement for Africa, for green growth in Africa, and also how to integrate that into Africa's developmental agenda. One of the important things that came up, of course, which did come up in Paris, is that billions of dollars are going to be needed in terms of helping Africa leapfrog, and the fact that Africa is the least contributor to the effects of climate change, but is also adversely affected by the effects of climate change. So these were some of the interesting things that came out of the discussion. That first of all, the search for funds must be both outward looking but also internally in terms of local resource mobilization, and that needs to be something important. Also, in tapping into the finance and to many of these funds that already exist, it would be important to get the right sort of skill set to enable African countries to tap into those resources and into those funds to help them in terms of development, and also just key in terms of getting those pledges that were made in Paris into reality. There was another issue that came up about configuring some of these plans for development, green growth, into the national development strategies of individual countries. That way, they will be prioritized, and the funds that will be put into them will actually be made possible and available. And Africa is at an interesting point because its infrastructure is still growing, it's still nascent. And so it was identified that this would be an important point in time to start to configure Africa's infrastructure to be climate resilient. This is different from the Western developed nations who already have quite a bit of their infrastructure in place, and so now have to reconfigure. But we in Africa have the chance to configure our infrastructure now to making it climate resilient in the future. And finally, it was about making sure that what is discussed here at the Africa Development Week is actually felt at the national and local level, and therefore getting everybody from the rural areas to the young people, to the men and the women who are indeed on the ground in various localities across the continent on board with the Paris COP21 agreements, and to getting them to walk the talk together with the governments and together with the regional bodies. So talking about that national implementation, but also taking it down to the grassroots, so that this is an all-inclusive conversation. That, I think, were the highlights of that discussion on green growth in Africa, specifically when we take a look at how to implement Paris COP21 agreements.